Hey guys, this is Jordan, aka Angelus here for PokerVIP.com. Today I'm going to be playing two tables of 200 No Limit Rush on Full Tilt Poker. Right now, the player pool is actually fairly big compared to how it normally is for this game. It tends to run sporadically, so you should get into some interesting spots, and the pace of the video should be faster than a lot of my previous ones. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. Something that I'm going to be looking to do a fair bit at this limit is exploit some of the regs. There's a huge difference between the guys that predominantly play 200 and the guys that play 400 at this site. So like we have a lot of guys that are going to be just folding far too much to 3-bets and stuff like that. Specifically, like this is a great example right here. He's folding 70% on the button. We can literally 3-bet just about any two against him. On this turn card, it gives us showdown value. We're likely, obviously, we have plenty of equity to be able to bet here. That being said, our hand is fairly weak. I think I prefer a check. I think if we continue to barrel, we're just going to fold out stuff that we're already ahead of anyways. And he can bet some stuff here as a bluff, like maybe he floated with like ace-queen or something like that. So we have a pretty easy fold on the river, I think, if you were to bet. This is kind of interesting. Typically, I probably wouldn't be 3-betting this hand without a fairly good reason. This guy folds to 75% of 3-bets versus me over our sample, which isn't particularly huge. That being said, I have him marked green. He is a reg. I just have him marked as a fish because I guess he's a really bad reg. I'm just going to like to call here. If this was a fish, obviously, or a looser reg, this would be like a slam dunk 3-bet, obviously, but I think here just calling is fine. Here you can bet or check the flop. Both are fine. I like to check back and pot control a little bit. And if he checks the turn here, it's going to be 2 bets for value, likely on the medium size. Let's get value from stuff like, you know, 10s, jacks, an ace high that decides to call, stuff like that. When he check raises, I think he's just, again, like he's a bad reg, so he probably just, you know, smacked this flop pretty hard and is deciding to go for a check raise. I also block like a really important part of 2 of the different flush draws he could have that he would play this way. So I think he's just, you know, bad and is check raising with, you know, a 9 here or kings full or 4s full, something like that. The amount of times that he's going to bluff here is probably pretty infrequent. He isn't one of those really kind of regs, so yeah, you have a pretty easy fold. We're going to be folding a lot in that spot against that guy, almost exploitably so, but that being said, again, he's just not going to be that good, so I don't think he's going to be exploiting us there at all. He's just going to be doing it with a narrow enough range that we can defend like such a narrow range as well. Here with ace-4 against a guy with 13 blinds, we're just going to go ahead and raise. And if he limp re-raises, we're okay getting it in. There's already like a bunch of money, dead money here, so should have a better hand, that's okay. Fish in this spot are going to also show up with tons of like, you know, king jack, king 10, jack 10 kind of stuff too that we're doing fine with. They'll also fold like a surprisingly amount of the time. Obviously versus a min-raise jack 10 suited here is going to be totally fine. And we flop the nuts, which is always good. And his range can be pretty strong here, given that he's opening from under the gun +1. So I certainly expect him to have a fairly strong hand. And that's unfortunate, obviously. Ugh. Here, king 4 suited is a pretty standard open on the button with just about anyone in the big blind. And here with the fish opening small, I want to ISO him in position. I expect a small 3-bet to get respect from the guys behind, and for it also to almost always be just called by this guy. But he's not going to be 4-betting very light, so when he does 4-bet, we can easily just fold our hand. This is going to be a spot where we're just going to be able to get our hand in position pretty often. That being said, when we flop up a pair here, there's no reason to do anything but just check back. When we turn a 4, that's great for our hand. I think raising is probably okay, actually. Typically against a reg, I'd probably just be calling here, because that's what I'm going to do with all my 10x and like any kind of like club draw that I turn and stuff like that. So I think that raising is probably a mistake, but against a weaker player, I don't think he's going to follow through on rivers a lot with his bluffs. But he's going to call with every ace-x, 10x if he bet it, and certainly any weaker 4 or club draw. So I like a raise, but a small one. And that gives us like roughly a pot size bet, so we're just going to go ahead and stick it in and hope that he has an ace here. Like I said, I don't think he folds any ace realistically. Oh, and he ended up actually hitting ace-jack on the river, which is like ideal scenario, obviously. So that was a really lucky turn card for us, clearly. But we'll take it. Versus a weaker reg, this is clearly an obvious 3-bet. We're going to be 3-betting a lot as a bluff out of the small blind, so ace-queen is obviously a value 3-bet that we need to have, otherwise our 3-betting range is going to be far too bluff heavy. It'd be an interesting squeeze spot with the queen, queen 8 suited, but that particular reg never folds to 3-bets, especially versus me. And so I think that spot's probably not the greatest spot to be looking to bluff. Especially because I think a lot of the way he's going to continue the hand is by 4-betting, being that he has the worst position of the 3 of us. There with the 5-8, I was going to be considering 3-betting the button because he folds a lot. Although not so much to me, I think he has a perception of me that extra bluffy when I 3-bet, or that I 3-bet a lot. But when the smaller stack kind of fishier player opens, I don't think it's a good spot to be bluffing. Here, there's pretty much no decision but to call. 4-betting is almost like turning our hand into a bluff, and it just is really bad for a hand that has this much equity versus his range. His 3-betting range can consist of, obviously some hands that dominate us, like Ace Queen and Ace King and stuff like that. But he's also going to have a decent amount of bluffs and suited stuff, and obviously in 3-bet pots, if we can flop better draws, which Queen suited is going to flop a lot of the time, we're going to be looking like really, really good. So it's like a slam dunk call. Now we hit a board that's not going to really hit his range very much, and then I expect him to actually check fold a decent amount. So I'm going to go ahead and bet half pot, which is what I'm going to do with most of my value hands here. I expect to get a fold a decent amount. Here with two, one unknown and one smaller sample, but it looks like a regular player in the hand. I don't think there's any merit to be c-betting this board. He's gonna check sometimes, and we're gonna realize an ace or a king, and then he'll get some value. And other than that, we do have what appears to be a weaker player behind, just because I don't have a sample on him. And this is just gonna hit someone almost every time, and it's gonna be really sticky trying to get him to fold. If we just heads up with the reg, yeah, I would definitely be considering it. However, with the weaker player in, it's just very, very bad business to be betting there. Show up with 4s and 7s. It's interesting that the reg called with 4s. It's definitely going to be a mistake in all likelihood, unless he has more hands on that guy and it turns out that that guy is just like a jeweler or something like that. If that's the case, then the call is fine. But otherwise, calling there with 4s is going to be a mistake. It's also interesting to note that he opened the pot to 4x with 4s, which is kind of weird. Here we get a slam dunk 3-bet with jacks. Should we get 4-bet, we'd be getting it in. I'm just checking how many tables this guy's playing. He just won tabling, so I think he can pretty comfortably just 3-bet him. This is on a bigger side. I probably should have made it slightly smaller, but given stack sizes, it's kind of whatever. Again, I don't mind checking back given that we have position. There's a bunch of turn cards that are pretty good for us. He's also going to check down some hands that we beat, so I think it's okay. If he bets this river, I think you have a pretty easy fold, and you just check back and hopefully show down the best hand. And he shows 5-3, so he's obviously calling any 2 there, so we can start 3-betting him really, really wide. Especially because the fact that he's just checking down and stuff like that, we're going to be able to 3-bet him really, really wide. If I had a heart here, this is like a really bad raise no matter what hand he has pretty much, unless he's really thought about what ranges he's doing it with, because he has very few 4s, or very few 5x, and like even his 5x are just so nutted that there's no reason to be raising them, because this is a board that I'm expected to barrel off quite a bit. So when he raises here, it just means that he's either really thought about it a lot and has actually like got a range that is really organized in this spot, or he's just doing something dumb and has like a good hand and hopes that I have a big good hand too and go with it. But that's obviously not a smart way of playing. I would definitely advise in those spots to not be raising your nutted hands. That's not the way you play the vast majority of your range. So unless you're bluffing with the correct frequency and the correct combo of hands, there's just no reason to be raising there. Because any good player can realize that this is a spot where you're not raising very much and make the correct decision accordingly. And plus, it's such a great barrel spot, realistically, depending on the run out. If you do have such a nutted hand there, that like it makes really no sense. Good players are going to be barreling that those turns and rivers quite a lot, because generally speaking, you're going to always have like an ace high or a weakish 1 pair. So that being said, it looks like the bulk of your range is going to have to fold to multiple streets of pressure. So when you can do that, that's going to result in your opponents barreling a lot, and you're just getting additional value from all of their bluffs, which is going to be, by and large, the vast majority of their range on a board like that. And obviously very infrequent that players connect with a 5 board, or a 5-5-4 board. So their offsuit combos and stuff like that just add up to far more combos than hands that have actually hit, which, by the way, are going to barrel anyways, right? It's not like he's going to stop barreling aces or something like that, and that you need to immediately get value from his overpairs, because they're going to continue to barrel those for value. Because like we said, your range looks mostly like middle-ish pairs kind of thing. So you're still going to get value from all those hands, but in addition to that, all these offsuit combos of like ace-king and stuff like that, you're going to go ahead and get value from them. So yeah, it just makes no sense. And here we have a pretty standard get-in. Obviously he has a better hand, which is pretty typical, but we can't do anything but just get our hand in. Here we just have no equity, and it's a board that's highly floatable, so I think betting's a mistake. And I think that if he checks back, certain turn cards will allow us to bet and take the pot away. So I see no reason to be betting there. If it was suited, Jackman suited would be a fine complete there. But given that it's not, probably just gotta fold it. At least we're just gonna get this in pre against you green. He's got 3.5 blinds. Maybe again against this weaker player, it's going to be a very awesome 3-bet should he open. When he doesn't, we'll just ISO. And we're just going to go for 3 streets of value here against him. If we get raised at any point, it'll be kind of lame, just because he seems pretty passive about most of his stuff. So I don't like if he raises here. And 8 changes a little bit, but as we saw from before, he can have 5-3, which means he can obviously have like some 2x here, some 3x, certainly just about every diamond draw, and then some like 5s, 6s, 7s, stuff like that. So like none of those hands are folding, and given that the 8 comes, and it makes combo-wise it a lot less likely that he has it. So we're just going to continue barreling, and if he raises, we can release the hand. To not continue barreling there against a weaker player would be a huge mistake, and you'd be losing a lot of value, especially because obviously the bet sizing compounds itself. So by missing the bet on the turn, your river bet's going to be a lot smaller. Thus, not only do you miss a bet on the turn, but you get a smaller bet in on the river. So you just lose quite a bit of value by not betting that turn. I'm not going to bet every single river, but we're going to bet most of them probably. I'm here to expect to knuckle down the best hand. Value betting would probably be too thin, although against that guy it might be actually okay. And here we have a pretty easy value bet when we river our straight. Expect most of his club draws to bet on the turn. Sorry, bet on the flop, I mean. So when we hit our straight on the river, it's a pretty easy bet, especially because that 10 2 pairs him a lot. Check raising could be a thing, but I think it's a little bit thin. Here 10-3 suited is probably kind of loose, but Fishbone's only 3-bet 6%. He does 3-bet 11% out of the small blind versus steel, which is fairly high. Probably not even that high, so like it's fine. We've got a weaker player in the big blind. We should be exploiting that by raising a lot. And he min 3-bets, so can have a really easy call, obviously. It's really annoying when people do that because it's such a bad decision no matter what the hand is. So it's so frustrating when you don't hit. Hopefully I turn it 2 and like teach him a little lesson. But no, the idiot probably hit like top set, or he misclicked, which is another thing because I don't think I've seen that out of him very often, if ever, to be honest. So it's totally possible he meant to do 16 and just typed in, and the 1 didn't register or something like that. Here we have a pretty standard open, I think, with a big fish at the table. Here we have a pretty easy flat. Guy folds a lot to 3-bets, and his stack size makes it kind of awkward to get in. He also only opens 12% under the gun. I mean, the sample is not converged, but it's definitely big enough to make me somewhat weary of his under the gun opening range. So we're going to call the c-bet and go from there. When Johnny tilt overcalls, that's kind of weird. Maybe he's just tilted and playing that, but at the same time, like, he should be aware of the under the gun range and my range. Although I expect him to be squeezing queens plus, so unless he has like 2s or quad 4s or something like that. If he bets here, it's like an easy fold though. Like, he's just never getting out of line there, and he always just has a boat. I think when he bets, we have a pretty easy fold. I just don't see him value betting worse, and he's certainly not going to bluff there. I have no clue what Johnny Tilt's calling with there. That just seems pretty bad, especially when I call second act. That just seems really bad for him to be calling there. Here we're going to go for 3 streets, pretty standard. I mean, I think he's got some ace jacks, ace tens, and stuff like that that I think we can be ahead of, so I'm going to call for the small price. Fish tend to do some pretty weird stuff, so I'm not shocked if I see ace 10, ace jack, or jack 10 there. And obviously we're getting like an absurd price. So we only have to be right a very small percentage of the time in order to make that an okay call. We're going to ISO a fish. My sizing's probably a little bit bigger than it needs to be, but it's fine. Versus like a limp re-raise, which for some reason I feel like is coming right now. We're just going to really easy fold. And now we're going to have a really easy bet. I think we smash this board a lot, and these guys just don't. Specifically, the Veyros guy is going to just like have whiffed this board a lot. It's big P. He's going to have, you know, some suited connectors and some small pairs. They're just going to have to fold to 1-bet. Like, if he's not folding pocket 4s here, he's just playing like really bad. Hopefully, he just has pocket fours and the 8 is good. But yeah, and he probably just had like ace queen or some kind of king, which is unfortunate, but it's a very 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 good c bet there. Going to a lot of 3-bets on the button, so I think I prefer a 3-bet here. And this guy's also folding to a lot of 3-bets, so. We have backdoor flush draw. If we had a better ace, I would be more inclined to check because we have more showdown value. Excuse me, but with such a weak ace, and especially with the backdoor draw, I prefer c-betting. Here against a weaker player, I think if it goes check check, we'll just bet and try to take away the turn. I think we can also like show down our hand a decent amount of the time here. Like I think if we show down our hand here, we'll probably have the best hand. Here the flop goes check check. Turn, I'm trying to get a check raise in. I think he checks back some 10x and stuff like that. That'll decide to bet the turn. Certainly he can have some ace-x that decides to bet the turn, some flush draws that he picked up, stuff like that. So, it's not the greatest, but I think we just get it in here. Hope for the best. Could have ace-4 and stuff like that. He can definitely have some 2 pairs. He also has some pocket 4s that he hits sometimes. And that's obviously so disgusting. That's the way I run these days, but, I mean, I don't think we can ever fold our hand, even though he's probably like such a nit that like we're not getting it great there. But he's got to have some ace 4s and some other 2 pairs that he overplays sometimes to make that okay. That's obviously really absurd and ridiculous, but it happens. Pre-flop and nut flush draw. Against the guy who folds his big blind to steal, like kind of average high amount, I'd say, like higher than normal, but not so much. So I think he's gonna have some other flush draws in his range sometimes and stuff like that too. Obviously the nut flush draw is like a pretty huge draw, and when we hit, we have nothing but to do but to continue barreling. And he leads the river. So I think we just get our hand in. It's not like an absurdly big bet here. Certainly never folds a flush. And whether he folds like a straight and stuff like that is kind of debatable. I think he almost polarizes himself a little bit when he leads there. I don't think he does it just with some like raggy 2 pair. So I think he does it with some hands that he's just going to always fold to a raise, or some hands that he's going to call a decent amount of the time. So I think raising all in there is fine. I don't really see much else you can do. Or just 3-betting against a guy who folds too much. Especially if you have a blocker, it's a pretty good spot. Here's a pretty standard defend with 6s, even when we're, especially when we're like somewhat deep. This is obviously misclick. I meant to fold. This is a very standard opener with king queen off, especially with three pretty weaker players behind. We're going to be calling here with our king queen, and on king and queen high flops we're just going to be getting our hand in. Now it's like an easy fold, obviously. Here we're going to have a pretty defendable hand with queen jack off. We flop no equity. This is a spot that if I had like, a club or something like that, or if it was queen jack of diamonds, it'd be a pretty good spot to check raise. Just because he's probably going to be c-betting this board a little bit too much. And when he checks, we just have a pretty good spot to bluff twice. He's going to bet all of his good tens. And he just isn't going to check back flush draws very often. And we'd obviously be value betting like 10-9. Obviously any set, any two pair realistically. So like we have a pretty good spot here. He's not going to get out of line and bluff raise the river or anything like that. So this is a really good bet twice spot. A lot of the players at this limit aren't thinking of their check back range and stuff like that. So we just have really great spots and pots like that to be exploiting them, where they're not checking back enough good hands. So they're super unbalanced when they check back there, and we're just going to be able to get a lot of folds. Here I'm just going to fold. This guy really doesn't 3-bet very much when he cold calls. We're 150 big blinds deep, and we're with a hand that's got pretty harsh reverse implied odds. If this was suited, I would definitely play it, but given that it's not, I'm just going to fold. And so like on a king high flop, I mean, we're going to be obviously calling multiple streets with our hand, but unimproved. If we face 3, we're almost never good. The sizing is pretty interesting to me. I would have assumed if he had a big hand, he would probably be betting on the bigger side. Thus, he should probably be bluffing on the bigger side as well. Just because of how deep they were. I don't think his sizing is going to change the continuing range. I mean, realistically, he'll either peel once more with a king X or he won't. He's folding everything else, and if he has ace king, or if he somehow decided to call the flop with ace queen, he's not folding to any amount on that turn. So, I mean, I think not betting big with your value hand is a huge mistake. So it leads me to think that he was bluffing. Obviously, if you have like a nutted hand there, you want to be building the pot to get value on the river. But again, this guy's not very good. He's like kind of a mediocre rig, so maybe he's not thinking that clearly about his hand. The caliber of play like changes drastically from 200 to 400. I think that can be said pretty much. It pretty much holds true on any site. One of the biggest jumps is definitely from 200 to 400, if not the biggest jump. I can't speak for like the 510 to 1020 or 1020 to 2550. I've heard those jumps are fairly big as well. But from what I've seen, all the way up to like 510, the biggest jumps are, in my opinion, anyways, from 1.2 to 2.4. The amount of fish and the caliber of rigs just is such a drastic change. I'm here with two players in the pot. C-betting this would be a mistake. And continuing versus a net would be a mistake here as well. Here we complete with ace-2 suited. A squeeze would be okay as well. Both are totally fine in this spot. I'm a little concerned with how often Johnny Tilt's gonna fold. He seems to like not believe me very often, but like that's okay. You still have a hand that's gonna play pretty easily post flop. And certainly Fishbone's gonna fold enough. He's folding to almost 70% of 3-bets. So that'd be even higher to squeezes. Here it's somewhat lame, but I think a squeeze is gonna be your best option. Playing with dreams is fairly solid. I don't think he's gonna be 4-betting a decent amount here. We can flat the 4-bet, which is fine. Getting it in this deep versus a under the gun +1 range is gonna be a mistake. But with Fishbones in the pot, getting hit with fold equity from his overly high fold to 3-bet percentage is gonna be good. Flatting is definitely has another like value to it though, just that it allows like other pairs. So for instance, like playing with dreams might open 4s there, but he'll probably fold it to a 3-bet quite often. And like same thing can be said about Fishbones' cold calling range. So by allowing those hands to stay in that would otherwise fold, we increase our rate of setting them, which I mean is something that isn't going to happen very often, but when it does, it ensures us 150 big blinds, 95% of the time or whatever. So it's something that definitely should take some consideration into. So I definitely mix up the two. I just think that if I'm squeezing the bluff there, I need to have jacks in there for value, just to have a range that's not going to get like torn apart. Four-way, I'm just going to keep. I'm going to probably play pretty honest. If there wasn't a 3 to a flush, I would probably bet. Your 7s on the buttons are pretty standard open. And I think now, we've been playing for a little while, I'm going to sit our next big blind and kind of wrap up the video. Here against a weaker player, we just want to show down our hand. I don't think there's any value to be had, but certainly he can bluff turns and rivers. The turn might be a value bet actually, but yeah, actually, I think this is a fine value bet, somewhat small. Like he'll look me up with ace high or any kind of twos, pocket fours, pocket fives, and stuff like that, and he just never has a better hand. It's pretty thin, but he's playing like 40% BPIB or something like that, so I think it's going to be fine. Alright, and that's it for today's video. We'll be back soon with part 2 of this video. And other than that, if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to message them or post them on the site. And other than that, I'll see you guys in the forum. Take care.